Hey there everyone and welcome to some more Tower Heroes level guides. In this video we're going to look at the ranged dungeon, levels 3 to 6. So similar to the melee attacker dungeons, this really hinges on how many good range attackers you have. If you don't have very many of them, you're going to have kind of a hard time on some of the levels. That's just kind of the way it goes. But once you hit the point where you've got enough range attackers, you should be able to get through these without too much problem. So this first one, range 3, this one is very easy, to be honest. I'm just going to kind of jump straight into it because I'm not really going to show it. Also, the arrangement of where the heroes are, sorry about my throat there, the arrangement of where the heroes are isn't very clear what they're doing, so I think it's better to just see the battle itself. My heroes, we've skipped past it already, but they're all low level. I'm only using 2 to 4 stars here. Balfagor is a little bit higher, but it's fire, so it's kind of not as good against these water enemies anyway. So Silver I placed in this position because she can now cover all those squares down at the bottom. Canos on the right in that position because he can cover everything on the right, and they'll kind of do a good job. So they cut off a lot of these enemies coming through. Silver's also going to chip away at these wyverns, or whatever they're called, that are going to the top section, but they are, they're trying to sneak past her and they're not getting by. At this point, I put a second range attacker in the top right, also Remus to help out with the enemies. I think these are unblockable enemies, so yeah, they would just go breeze straight past Remus, but he does enough damage. And I put a defender down there as well, which the defender's not going to block them, I don't think, but it's a nature hero, so it'll do some damage. So Silver's going to get hit a bit here, which is why I put the healer down to cover Silver. There isn't that much damage that comes from anything in this. You can see there's quite a lot of these wyverns going in at the top right. They've been chipped away at by Silver, but you might want to use some skills in here to help take out the enemies. There's kind of big waves that come through at some of the points, like here. There's another big wave where we've got a lot of these flying enemies. So Silver covers the bottom, but that top bit you may need to use skills and stuff. And we've got some of these annoying range enemies that come through, but the healer should do a good enough job. And that's also why we've got the defender there, I remember now, is to protect Remus. But yeah, that's it for this level. Quite a fun one, actually, as the level 3s go. Let's move into the next one. So range 4, this one is again quite tricky to see from the screenshot. The screenshot I decided to take has these attacking flying enemies that come down on these 2 rows. That's right at the end, and I would say that's the toughest bit of the battle. It's them coming down and they attack whatever you've got set up. You've also got imps that fly along that explode. Sorry, imps, I say imps. They're kind of imps, but they're bombers. They fly along, and then if you have anything in the row or column where they fly along, they'll bomb it and basically one-shot. So you've got to place your heroes off those lines which they go along, which you'll see as we go to the clip itself, so I'll just go to that. So in terms of the levels for my heroes, I've got some a little bit higher for this than I would ideally want. I don't think you need them that high. Importantly, Sagus is Evo 1, so Sagus is going to cover the top just by himself. You put him on that zone which makes him better against flying enemies, and he one-shots these enemies very nicely, and he gets CP every other kill, so it's just ideal to put at the beginning. It's going to help you with some extra CP. So he takes out those. I think the next wave is also along the top. Yes, it is. It's another... they're a bit more bunched up, so it might be a bit scary, but Sagus kills them, so it's not a problem. I don't think I even have Frenzy set on him, so he's not attacking faster or anything, he's just killing them. So he also kills those bombers too. I used a skill, but you didn't need to use the skill. So I've set up some heroes along the bottom here. I set them up in advance so their skills are ready. You've got these very grouped up wyverns, which are a bit trickier to deal with. So you can see I will use the skill of Tig at that point to help take out the groups. We're also avoiding these 2 columns because this is where bombers come along, but we have all the range attackers facing inwards, so they're going to attack the enemies that come through. Balfagor can hit the left-hand side as well. I believe Scarlet can hit the right-hand side. Well, Silver can as well. So they're going to take out the enemies as they come through, and it shouldn't be too tricky for a little bit. But you can see we're actually quite close to the end. There's only 14 enemies left, and this is where the tough wave comes. And this is where I would recommend putting down some healers. So you don't need the healers for any point before this, but at this point you do. Silver's actually going to die from the type disadvantage. She just dies off a bit too easily there. But yeah, the last enemies you want healers for, it's a little bit trickier. That's range 4. Range 5, I would say, is actually the hardest level from the ones we're showing in this video. I got a bit stuck on it for a bit, and pretty much because I didn't have enough good range attackers. I believe it was once I got Scarlet properly, because did I have Scarlet at the time when it originally opened? I can't remember if I did. But basically I needed a little bit stronger range attackers. So you may find a similar thing, or maybe your collection will just have enough range attackers. But this was the point that kind of I couldn't progress beyond this point. And the main reason is the ground bit. So there are some ground enemies in this, and you can't place any melee heroes to block them, so you've got to take them out. So you've got to have enough damage dealing from your ranged attackers to kill these enemies, and they're a little bit tanky. So they're the gargoyles that the spawn, there's kind of 3 spots they spawn at. It's like on the left in the middle, at the bottom on the right, and on the right hand side. They'll spawn there, they'll run around to the gate in the bottom left. And yeah, so you need to cover those as well as the range enemies, sorry, flying enemies, which spawn on the left at the top, go to the top right, and on the right at the bottom, and go to the bottom left. I'm struggling with left and right there. Yeah, so anyway, that's kind of it. We'll look at the clip itself. Silver and Canos are going to be great here because they're fire enemies. So the level of my heroes, again, a little bit higher than I would like to have shown for this clip. But you'll see it's very comfortably done, so you can probably do it with slightly lower level heroes. So start off with Silver at the bottom here, facing right. She's carefully positioned, so she's actually going to cover on the left hand side. If you look at like the bottom bit that the enemies are going to come out on the left hand side, as they fly across, they're going to fly past Silver and they're going to get chipped down as well. Now I use Arctis on the top. This was kind of the bit that made it easy for me, is I used Arctis. I think the top row to begin with is a little bit tougher than the bottom row, so you could use Canos on the bottom and Silver on the top in place of Arctis, but however you do it, it's going to be something like this. So I put Arctis in the middle, so he's going to cover kind of those 3 rows nicer than they'd otherwise be covered, you know. And then, yeah, we've got Canos there. Scarlet, I've carefully placed at the bottom, so she's out of the way of the bombers that come through, and she's going to cover everything that's flying across, as well as these melee enemies very nicely too. So these 4 heroes are doing a really good job of dealing with most of the things so far. We've now got some of these annoying flying enemies that attack, which Scarlet is basically going to tank. You may need a healer though if you're not using a Scarlet like this. And yeah, your heroes are going to be slightly divided between the different enemies they're attacking, so you need to have enough damage output from them to get through. I'm not using my skills though, so you know, skills could be used if required to take things out. I put down another range attacker now, Tig there, because we're going to get slightly more enemies coming on this bottom bit, and we need some more damage output. You can see there's a couple of gargoyles around, there's still these flying enemies coming in. On the top it's a lot easier. The top is basically a case of set it up with a couple of range attackers and they'll do the job. It's the bottom section which you really need to focus on. Getting enough damage output there. Oh, I did put down a healer. Okay, we've got a healer near the end. So now range 6. Like I said, maybe slightly easier than range 5, but it's certainly not a walk in the park, and it takes a little bit of thought to put in, especially nearish the beginning. So to try and say where all the enemies come from is actually kind of complicated. Basically, there's enemies that kind of come across. There's some that come down, I believe, yeah, and then fly in to the bottom, and then we've got some melee enemies, these gargoyles, which again pop in from the bottom and stuff and then go up to the top. Basically you've got to kind of cover the central section, so everything I put in is around the central section, either looking inwards or kind of like up and down there. So yeah, let's just get to the clip itself. I think that's probably easiest. Because they're water enemies, Sagus is going to be ideal for this battle. I used a Sagus Evo 1. If you have him higher level, he's going to do an even better job. So Sagus is going to be, well, okay, we're not actually at the clip yet. I'll wait a second. Sagus is when you put the thing you put down first. He's going to help you with a bit of CB generation as well, which is why I can't remember exactly the timing I used, because basically I tried to delay deploying of the other range attackers that I'm going to deploy, but I want to deploy them fast enough that they still get their skills ready, because bombers are about to come. So you can see they haven't quite got their skills ready, but they hopefully will, I think, on these next ones. So what I've done is I put 2 range attackers facing up and then Sagas facing down, which means that they kill off the bombers fast enough, other than this last one, which I had to use a skill for. That's kind of the way I did it to try and deal with them. I recommend something similar, basically, that will take down those bombers while also being able to deal with all the other flying enemies that were coming before. So now we have the gargoyles coming through. We've got enough heroes there that are attacking those 2 paths, because the central ones are attacking both of them very nicely. So now we've got pretty much the end game setup that we wanted to have. There's some enemies here which attack Sagas, so you need a healer, and ideally you want the healer positioned in a way where it's going to heal the range attacker on the right hand side, because we're also going to get some flying enemies that will damage coming in from each of the sides. So I play Scarlet at this point. You don't need Scarlet. The 7 which I had were kind of fine. Whatever you do with the 8th hero, it's up to you. You could put something down at the bottom maybe. Hitting up. Scarlet actually dies because she's got that element disadvantage. She just died too easily. But yeah, we're pretty much at the end now. I think there's another wave coming from the right, which has got some attacking enemies, and I've got a lot of skills still ready. I'm basically just going to use them at the end. Or, oh no, at this point, okay, I used Arctis' skill to take down a damaging enemy faster, because Syrian is kind of getting wrecked by that damaging enemy. They do quite a lot of damage, because your range attack is just way too squishy. But anyway, that's it for this level. Just a few gargoyles at the end you can use skills on. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it's been useful, and I'll see you in a video soon.